From Sunset Beach, Hawaii, weighing 267 pounds, the magnificent Muraco.
Why is it they call him magnificent? The man who lifts condominiums off his chest. Anything that's explosive, anything that's exciting. Prince of Darkness, master of destruction, perpetrator of violence. Get ready! I'm gonna burn this place down!
Hello and welcome to the 7th episode of Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast. My name is James. You can follow us on Twitter at Don Muraco Pod, YouTube, Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast, and DonTheRockMuraco.com for all your signed merchandise like photos, figures, all that kind of thing. But enough of me plugging the stuff. We're going to be talking about Dynamite Kid today, and by we, I'm going to carry on with this intro. I'm not going to do another one. I'm going to throw it straight to Don Muraco himself. How you doing, man?
Hello from Sunset Beach. How you doing? Nice warm summer going.
That was the worst intro I've ever done, but I'm not doing another one. I'll make an even worse one somehow. How's the weather?
Good. I got your interview. we know what we're here for.
Man, you asked me how the weather was going here. It is as overcast as it gets. I can't do Fahrenheit. I know it's in the 60s somewhere, and it's pissing down with rain. And how hot is it over there?
Well, it's headed for the higher 80s, but on the United States, on the mainland of the United States, it's in the hundreds over there. It's ridiculous. Everybody'd be dying to be in England right now, I think, without a jacket. And they're just. I was watching the Olympic trials yesterday. It was 110 in Portland, Oregon, way up north like that. That's almost in Canada. It's 110 there. Unbelievable.
Well, the Olympic trials, is it just wrestling or is it everything?
Every kind of they're shipped. There was track and field, but they're shifting around different parts of the country. But it's centralized out of Eugene, where the track is, and Nike.
Do you keep in touch with amateur wrestling still? Because I know you obviously did it as a kid.
Not really. I'm not like Jerry Briscoe or one of those guys. He's on. He was, Oklahoma State, and he travels and he's in a bunch of amateur wrestling Hall of Fames and stuff like that. No, I watched the Nationals. I watched a little bit of college, and then I follow it over here in the high schools in Hawaii. But as far because I'm kind of removed from the general activity of amateur wrestling here, so I follow the high schools.
Yeah, as far as Olympics,
the grandson getting ready to move.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I was going to say, as far as the Olympics are concerned, which countries are favourites apart from America, obviously?
Which countries?
Yeah, is it going to be like Iran and stuff like the usual players?
Yeah, then it was when I was growing, it was that Middle Eastern bloc, the Germany, Russia, Hungary, Poland. I think it's England. I think where you're inside, we have to be inside all the time, or it's cold and it's not conducive to be out running, out riding bikes, or out playing on a field, or doing something outdoors that you lend your concentration to a more centralized activity training, so that naturally bring you better wrestlers and better.
Yeah, I mean, I think our amateur wrestling peak was over 100 years ago when the Snake Pit was going in the 10s and 20s, basically. So there's just no amateur wrestling program here at all, practically.
All shooting, all the jiu-jitsu and shooting stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
Submission.
I mean, I think there was a bit of a move like judo and stuff like that, but that's pretty much it. There's not like boxing, obviously. There's not like a big combat sport as far as grappling is concerned in this country.
But you still have a wrestling gym like Wigan and.
Yeah. I think we've got some stuff like that, but as far as Olympics, we've got no hope. We have to get, we have to get rejects from other countries who've defected to say they're British, and then we throw them in.
Yeah, well, all those things they work on a population curve too. Where you got America, we're dealing with 300 million. 300 people, the diversified. probably your wrestlers are centralized from away from the East Coast and right down the middle of the Oklahoma, Texas, Iowa, that Minnesota, all that area there. We have, Pennsylvania, all inland areas. You're where the strength, the hardcore wrestlers come from.
Do you watch UFC? Because I'm a big UFC fan.
Oh yeah,
yeah. They've packed a
Max
few
Holloway. We got Max over here in Hawaii.
Yeah,
he just came off his peak. I think he's kind of dropped.
No way. His last fight, it was unbelievable. It was the best he's ever been.
Yeah, but the one before that, I think he got hurt.
Yeah, I was confusing with Tony Ferguson, but it was Tony Ferguson who's taken a massive dive, and Max Holloway seems to sort of like got back up to his peak somewhat. I mean, he's not like BJ Penn.
No, oh no. BJ was a wild man, I guess. He just he was all over the islands going crazy. Yeah.
Are the islands small enough that you like actually bump into some of these people, like other local celebrities?
Yeah. Well, BJ, I don't know him. I've never met him. I know he's a wrestling fan, but he was training some friends of mine on a different part of the island. I don't go into town. I don't get towards Honolulu very often, especially now that I'm retired. So I don't head onto that part of the other side of the island. So, but I know they were training, and I had a lot of friends there's still a lot of friends and stuff around Honolulu that are really into, physical. My grandson is just is an animal. He's 10 years old. He's doing some serious jiu-jitsu at his age, and surfing too. And my other ones are going to.
You can definitely fend the sharks off then if he's doing jiu-jitsu and surfing. Yeah,
he's I call him the grabber. He's the grabber. he paddles out. He just takes off in front of anybody. Oh, it's easy.
Tell you what, I'm going to ask you.
His dad with him.
I'm going to ask you one more UFC question: Conor McGregor or Dustin Poirier? Who have you got for the trilogy?
Man, no world champions come from Beverly Hills. When you're sitting there, close to all those millions and millions and millions in the bank, you're not as hungry. I think Poirier got to we're moving back 3 or 4 years before McGregor. I mean, before Mayweather and some of those other fights. I would like Colin, but it's hard to keep focused when you're.
It's hard to keep focused when you're punching old men in bars and cheating on your wife every day. So the rumors go. You've got a lot on your plate.
Yeah, all top shelves. No more pints, mates. Oh, you bring me the champagne.
Yeah. Oh, he's probably having that horrible proper 12 whiskey as well. He's conned a lot of people into buying that Drek. Let me tell you. Yeah,
and he's a rich man. He made himself a rich man.
Yeah, I tell you what, you can't knock success, is what I'm trying to say. And I'll tell you what, we're going to go straight into not Dynamite Kid straight away. I thought I'd mention this one wrestling news story first. So I've sort of teed you up already, so you know what's going on here. But a now former WWE writer, Kenice Mobley, was fired. Now, normally this wouldn't be a big deal. They've got dozens of writers on staff at any one time. But this one went on a podcast a few weeks after she was hired and basically admitted that she was hired despite the fact that she had no idea about wrestling and didn't even know Bobby Lashley's name. Yet, apparently, not knowing anything about wrestling is not a barrier to get into WWE as a wrestling writer. I suppose the question really is, why is the WWE the only organisation in the world that actively courts people who don't know anything about what they're doing?
Jeff! I gotta get something to throw. It's curious. You don't know why why she was. There may have been wanted her opinion as being somebody who had no opinion. Would be my only guess. Other than that, there's people that are qualified. I mean, there's bloggers all over the country, all over the world that that contribute and have different knowledge. And I know Howard Finkel, before his passing, had a blog and had a network of people that were in tune with the wrestling and knew what was going on. And I see myself on Facebook. So to hire somebody that knew absolutely nothing about, I would imagine would just to get her opinion as a third person. What do you think of this guy? This angle. Just looking at it from a point blank. A naive, a know nothing sense. My only guess. I have no idea why anybody would hire anybody that had no background or no idea, but just somebody, what do you think of this match? What do you think of these guys? Well, even for that, I'd be scrambling for a reasonable story to put together. Because people's opinion. Bobby Lashley, he's a monster. He's a guy's just shredded and pumped, and these other guys, if you don't know, you're not into bodies, you're not into movement, I don't know where she'd be coming from. So maybe the fact she got there and blew her mouth off, shot her mouth off, that she didn't know, she just should have stayed off the podcast and, and remained silent and thoughtful and opened her mouth and removed all doubt.
Well, I believe her background was she was a comedy writer. And they actually prefer comedy writers to wrestling people who are knowledgeable in wrestling.
Okay, yeah. Then why they would hire and why they would fire her? Like I said, she's melting off, Oh, I'm gonna kill those dogs. They left. I'm alone here. I'm alone here at the house.
Obviously, Vince McMahon constantly trying to diversify ever since the early 90s. There was the WBF, the World Bodybuilding Federation thing. There was he bought a hotel in Vegas, the XFL, music, film, stuff like that. Did you ever know Vince McMahon to want to diversify back in the 80s? Or really more what I'd ask is, did you ever think Vince McMahon was a bit embarrassed about the wrestling business?
Whoa, no, I think he was, he's tried and true. He was involved in that, probably before you were born, but Evel Knievel, jumping the Grand Canyon. He was involved in that.
Was he really?
That promotion. Yeah.
I don't know that story at all.
That was one of his first pay-per-view endeavors. That went international. So he's always been. I doubt he's lived by professional wrestling. He's third generation. So I doubt that. Possibly his wife, maybe Linda. Not excited, but as far as he was always been a backer of wrestlers.
Well, I mean, he sort of changed the name from wrestling to sports entertainment, and now wrestling is a banned term pretty much. But when was the first time you remember hearing sports entertainment, and were you ever sort of aimed at avoiding the word wrestle or wrestling?
No, I was retired when sports entertainment came about. They went through that they went through the lawsuit with the WWF, World Wildlife Foundation, and the WWE. Then it was get the F out, and then went to WWE. That was pretty clever advertising. I think after COVID and everything else, and going back to live buildings and everything else, I think that was what they did with the Dark Sides and the Mick Foley's and the Shawn Michaels and Undertaker, and even the negative Ultimate Warrior and Bret Hart's and all those things. I think that kind of rekindled the spirit of wrestling when it was, when it was that business, when it was kicking ass all over the place, and it kind of easing you back into the regular programming that they have, and maybe I think it's like a subliminal thing where you're going back when you're going to go to a house show, and you're going to see these champions now that wrestle each other every single week on television. I just don't understand the programming in that, but they wrestle. The world championship match, the world champion is wrestling his number one opponent but I get off of that. But I think that all these dark side isn't theirs, but all the other ones, all the A&E productions and finding the lost articles and stuff, that's kind of helped to wipe everybody's memory clean of what's going down, and the product that the repetition in the product that you've been getting the last year and a half over the COVID, which is no tarnish on their own thing, because you can only do what you can do, when you're limited like that. It's a situation where we haven't been through before, internet globally. So you're looking at the weak storylines and the weak plots and the weak angles that they keep throwing, the repetitious matches they keep throwing at you on TV. Well, maybe there's a reason, or you hope, hopefully there's a logical reason for all that.
I think it might be because Vince McMahon is mad. I think that might be the only reason.
I think he wants to.
Tell you what then, we'll move straight on then to our main subject. Now, originally this was going to be one episode, and now it's just going to have to be two because I wrote so many notes on this dude. Dynamite Kid, Tom Billington. So originally we were going to do Bret Hart, and I even asked for some questions about Bret Hart, so we'll have to use them at a later date. But the first thing I'll ask you is sort of a brief history of English wrestlers coming over to America during your time as a wrestler. And do you know anyone else apart from like Billy Robinson and Dynamite who trained, or at least claimed they said they trained at the Snake Pit?
Yeah, there was a bunch of guys that, I don't know if actually the Snake Pit, but they're all tremendous. Like they've laid the whole moving on of professional wrestling on Dynamite, when there was, there's Les Thornton, Tony Charles, Tony Rocca, the Finn guy that's he's the agent for Vince.
Yeah, Finley.
But then of course there was Robinson. Billy Robinson was, and then Peter Maivia went through. Then a lot of guys that came, the international stars came through England as well. So it's no doubt Dynamite he was a fabulous worker, and had a fantastic style, and was was going those high risk movements and the high, which cost him in the end. But all the high risk stuff and all this stuff he did, added a new dimension. But the English wrestlers themselves were fine, and their style and their technique was outstanding. So I don't think to lay everything on Dynamite. He's the one that changed the face of professional wrestling, and he did. He's definitely been a contributor to it. Because his talent, I watched when I was doing. I was watching Stan Hansen, and the big Texan Stan Hansen, and he spent his pretty much his career in Japan. So I for some reason, back-to-back weeks, do another podcast. He had one match where he was wrestling Andre the Giant. So he's the. Japan is his territory. He's the champion. He's the guy that. So I saw him. He took it to the Giant, and what a hell of a match they had. It was like a 230-pound, guys. Not the arm drags and drop kicks and stuff, but solid wrestling match, wrestling moves, and real logical wrestling. And wow, and then just so happened next week. I saw a match that had Dynamite in Japan, Dynamite and Stan Hansen, and because I was pretty much critiquing Stan, but the Dynamite as well. But Stan was able to work with the Giant in a real solid, close, push and pull, tug and, pull your tooth out wrestling match. And then the next week, or the next tape I saw, he was with Dynamite, and the quick moves, solid moves, and then almost a clothesline, but not quite there, and this, that, and Dynamite getting his share of the match in as a 210-pound guy wrestling a 360-pound, 370 pounder, which maybe whatever Stan was, he was a big guy, and he carried it well. He wasn't a fat man. He was just a big guy. But that, just comparing those two matches, which says a hell of a lot for the work of Stan Hansen. But the Dynamite match with him at the end was really extraordinary, really good.
You brought up Stan Hansen, and this is apropos of nothing. When I was researching for Dynamite Kid, in all Japan, did you team with Stan Hansen, or did you face him, or am I going crazy there?
Myself?
Yeah, did you ever team or face him?
Probably both. I don't remember if I think he kind of had his tag team partners. Terry Gordy, Danny Spivey, Williams, Steve Williams. I don't know, a couple other guys. He had maybe a 6-man. I may have been.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of a 6-man. Yeah.
Yeah, could have been partners in 6-man. I could have been against him in tags or 6-man. I usually was there as a single. But in Japan, they kind of roll you over to just about everything. So I was usually in a single. My early part of the career, I was spent a lot of time with Jumbo in one company, and the other one with Fujinami in the other for Inoki, and was the time filler for those guys, because they'd have Abdullah or somebody like that.
Yeah. So you never remember getting the clothesline? Sorry. I was going to ask you. I thought you'd remember if you'd received a clothesline off Stan Hansen.
I would have, so I didn't. I'm sure I would.
Sorry, I interrupted you then. So you said, speaking of Japan.
Speaking of Japan, I heard that Terry Funk is in home and disabled for dementia and.
No, is he?
Yeah.
Oh no.
I spoke with Scott Casey over the weekend, and I guess he's driving to Amarillo. He's all the way down to Amarillo. So I don't know. I know his wife passed away 2 or 3 years ago. And I just think his daughter Blue's at home. I know he had that ranch down there, but I don't know who he's with or what's going on.
Yeah,
and Paul Orndorff as well. I saw a disturbing Facebook on him. He was disoriented and dementia. The problems we're all going through. They're all something reaching. Guys my age.
I was going to say, except for you, because you've got everyone's been saying what an awesome recall you have. You've got the best brain.
Well, this is my cardio. This is my. In doing the podcast, this is my mental cardiovascular work that I do. I try recalls. I can do this, a couple hours a week. I'm all right.
I know we're doing Dynamite, but you keep bringing up names here. Terry Funk. I know you were in the WWF for a period with him. I'm trying to think where else you would have shared time with him. Did you see him down in Texas, or where might you have seen him?
He was around Florida. He came when he had the belt. He was around Florida. He was usually had a feud with Dusty, or I think he took the belt from Jack Briscoe, if I'm not mistaken. So he was still. When he had the NWA title, he'd spent a lot of time in Florida, and then I was with him around him a lot in WWE. He's one of those savant genius wrestlers from at West Texas area there. Him and Dory Jr. We're doing it a lot more serious, and they always called Terry Crazy because He used to do all the wild stuff. But he and Dick Murdoch and a few other guys, just fabulous. Like work is no work at all to them, They can get in the ring and just perform and just like another day off.
Yeah. Did he ever do any crazy stuff while you were around him, or just to amuse himself or anybody else?
No, Terry, no. I know him and Dick Slater used to run together in Tampa, and they'd tell me about some of the stunts they would pull. They believe they jumped off the bridge and rubbed sand on their bodies, and laying on the bottom. I don't know. I didn't understand. This Slater would go on. He and Slater were partners.
I don't understand rubbing sand into you and jumping off bridges. I don't know how the two are. I don't get it.
Well, so people driving by would recognize it, would notice them as being casualties from jumping off a high bridge. I didn't really get it either.
Well,
that's how they could get attention.
Fair enough then. I'll tell you what. I'll skip right off then. I'll ask you this Dynamite Kid question then. Because I normally ask you when was the first time you met him, but because Dynamite probably had quite a bit of buzz going in the industry. When was the first time you heard about him?
Heard about him. Probably when he was in Japan, when he was getting when he was a Tiger Mask, and who was his other chief rival there?
The Cobra, maybe.
Yeah, Tiger Mask and the other guy, and the guy with the spray. But he was pretty legendary out of Tokyo. And then for Stu, his reputation carried him pretty good from Stu, and he made shots around there. I tell you, the first time I saw him was in Hawaii when Peter had him suplexing marks before the match. I said, "What are you doing?" Belly to back, boom, right in the guy's head. So this guy's going to kill somebody and end up in jail. You're going to get, oh my God. The guys are, oh, would you like to? Yeah. Boom, boom. Oh my God.
Was this something like Bob Backlund? They'd invite just people in from the audience to wrestle him and just see how long they could last?
No. Bob wouldn't hurt you. He'd ride you down and tire you out, or lock you up. And no, these were high altitude activities.
But these were people who would volunteer to come in, before the matches, just to sort of test themselves.
Yeah. There are a few lined up. I'm not down the road. It wasn't a big crowd anyway. It was just a little crowd. But there's, a few guys that wanted to. And that mat, the old Block Arena mat, was like landing on the floor. It was just, there's no give to it. Lumps in it.
So there was the big, Japan feud with Tiger Mask and everything. And one thing probably most people won't know about Dynamite is that he briefly wrestled in Portland for a few months in between Stampede and going to the WWF. He had a feud with Curt Hennig. And one of the things that's interesting is he wins the heavyweight title off Curt Hennig in Portland. Was Don Owens pretty progressive in that regard, that he didn't really see Dynamite's size as a mark against him?
Yeah, Don was in there, and he lit the. If you had young guys like Piper had a run there. Buddy Rose, guys. Even Matt Bourne, his dad. I don't know if he took like a Piper clone, but he let young guys, run their business and run their angles. I'm back to Lonnie Main. I remember when I first went in there, Lonnie Main, Moondog Main, was calling a lot of, they would call all their shots and how, and they only had one TV. They only programmed for that. They had the Tuesday night or the Saturday night television, and a Tuesday night big show on every 3-4 weeks or whatever, it happened to be. So they'd blow it off. But so they only programmed for that one show. And the rest of it was Elton Owens and stuff like that. So it wasn't, so the younger guys like Henning, Dynamite, those guys were probably, running their own thing going.
Yeah, there was a couple more names that kept coming up in his brief time when he was wrestling there. So I'll throw a couple of names at you and see if you've got a story about them. One is Al Madril.
Yeah. He was American guy, Mexican-American guy, either out of Southern California or Texas somewhere, was fully Americanized and did a little bit of, I don't know if he worked a lot, did a little bit of Mexican style, but not a lot, or tried to incorporate it in his work, but he was more of an American style worker. Good hand. I was around him, Southern California for a little while, and a couple of places.
I'll give you another one that I know you must have a story or two on, Rip Oliver.
Rip Oliver. I was never really, he was around. He was a good guy. He was one of the boys. And he was always, liked by many. But I was never really around him a lot. I never spent, we'd be cross paths here and there. But I never really worked the territory or worked the time with him. So, but a lot of those guys up there got shots up there and chance, to run a territory, run a program, to see what's going on, to go from week to week. How are you going to build up? How are you going to move along?
And I'll give you one more, and you already mentioned him, Playboy Buddy Rose.
Yeah, Paul Pershman. Yeah, he was. He was from Minnesota. He would drive the ring truck, set up the ring for George Godasky. I don't know if he paid him or not, but after he did, he'd let him work out in the ring. And he was already doing those upside down bumps. He was a hell of a worker before. He was like 15, 16 years old. He was in the ring, and him and a couple of other ring guys, they'd have, pretty good little matches. And it was pretty good back in those days when wrestling there was a lot of variety, a lot of movement.
Would it be right in saying that Buddy Rose was a bit of a party animal?
With who? I'm sorry?
Buddy Rose. Would I be right in saying that he was a bit of a party animal?
Yeah. I know so much a party animal, but he let his demons, he got from a guy who never drank or anything, wasn't, it was really an unparty animal that he just became very, very dependent on pills or cocaine or whatever happened to the flavor of the day, which is I don't know if it's usual, but I mean he had he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he nothing, it was soda pop.
So I'll tell you what, I'll move on then, and we'll go to Dynamite and obviously Davey Boy going to the WWF in 1984. I don't know if it's an apocryphal tale or not, but apparently the story goes that when the Bulldogs signed with the WWF, Vince McMahon got up on a table and did a little dance. Have you ever heard that story?
No.
Damn.
Vince was dancing?
Yeah, supposedly he was so excited he signed them that he got on the table and did a dance.
He liked to dance. I remember one of those slammies he was walking around Princeton. It's very possible. A lot of that stuff went down in Stamford, Connecticut, where we were always on the run. We never got into the office very often.
I'll tell you what then, we'll move on, and I'll ask you this. When Davey and Dynamite were signed on along with Brett as well, were there some people in the back, in the locker room, who were a bit sceptical of signing so many so-called undersized wrestlers at the time?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Brett came in. He wasn't undersized. Brett was pretty good size. Brett was close to 6 feet, 225, 230. Wasn't too small. Davey Boy naturally was a powerhouse. Dynamite 210, 215, rock solid. If there was a movement about that, because Macho Man had already come in for having, a smaller sized.
He was actually the year after. He was 85, I believe, when he came in. So Dynamite would have been
Macho
first.
came in after them?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know. I guess usually if you got guys that size that can carry their weight, and can do business, because who they start working with, like Valentine and Beefcake and Moondog.
Yeah, more like an 86. Yeah, that was after a couple of years after they came in, but yeah.
The Islanders, Haku and Tonga Kid. I don't know. There's a bunch of guys. They were, they held their own. And more so,
Well, I'll tell you what then. What are the differences, personality-wise, between Davey and Dynamite?
Well, the Dynamite's aggro. He's a full bore. He's you go. It's really not. It'll jump from. He's not really fixated. We're Davey likes to train. Took care of his. They both would go. Go the limit to play ribs. I guess some of the stuff they did up in Calgary was rolling guys in rugs in the snow, dragging them in cars and stuff like that. There's legendary abuse and stuff that gets you locked up now. That what was this? John Smith, John something. Oh, it was Robinson used to talk to him from Wigan. He was a tough old bird. Didn't look like anything, but he used to drive he drove the van for Stu on all the trips to the Regina, 400 or 500 mile trips that they had, and they'd get it, and the Bulldogs would douse his coffee or his beer with whatever was the flavor of the Valium, sleeping pills or whatever, and then. I guess he went in for they worked together. They were a tag team in more ways than one. But he went in for a physical. And the doctor told him, "You're in great shape." He says, "You just got to stop taking all those pills." He says, "Pills? Never took a pill in your whole fucking life." He had no clue, And his mind he'd never had, but I guess they'd come on these 300-400 mile trips, and 20 minutes in the trip, he'd be passed out asleep, wake up when they got back to Calgary. But yeah, that was Davey Boy at Dynamite.
Is it fair to say that Davey was maybe the follower and Dynamite was the leader, maybe in the ring as well as out of the ring?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. That'd probably be safe to say, Dynamite. The more experienced guy, probably more aggressive. Not that Davey was lacking for any innovation or any ideas. Davey was pretty out there as well. In fact, he could lay back and let Dynamite. Dynamite would catch all the heat, and he'd be able to sneak his stuff into the into the act. And Bulldogs again, the damn Dynamite, the Bulldogs, but most of the heat falling on Dynamite.
I'm going to go straight to WrestleMania 2 then. So this is 1986. This is the one where it was from 3 different cities: Chicago, Los Angeles, and the third one, New York, maybe. No one correct me. Nassau. Yeah, there we go. So against the Dream Team of Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. And apparently, the original plan was for the Bulldogs to win, which eventually they did. But late in the day, it was said that the tag team titles, the booking plan was going to change, the Dream Team was going to keep the titles, and Dynamite threatened to walk and just leave the WWF and go back to Japan if they didn't win the belts. Do you remember anything about that?
No, nothing about it, no. I might have heard something about it in some of those shoot interviews, but I wasn't privy to any of that discussion. I was around for any of that.
Okay, I'll tell you
Everybody
what.
went on their own little, everybody had their own little room, their own little section that they, guys didn't make their business that public, Guys weren't walking around saying, I'm not doing this, and if I don't get, you have to realize the kind of money, that everybody was pulling down in those days. And it was before contracts, but they would pretty much line you out have you pretty much on a weekly salary, where they were able to manipulate your salary on a weekly basis to kind of balance you out.
Yeah. How much would the, let's say, tag team titles or the Intercontinental title, how much of a boost to your pay weekly would the belt give you?
Well, naturally, you'd have to be doing business, especially, maybe the secondary towns that you were carrying on. But I'd probably, in the original, the early days, before it became such a conglomerate, probably mid $200,000 to $300,000 a year bracket, which in those days is phenomenal money. People hadn't heard that was, that was World Championship. That was, like when I broke in, Kaniski had been the world champion. Dory Funk Jr. was the world champion. The world champions were doing 150 grand a year. And that was considered excellent money in the 70s. That was considered fabulous money. As a wrestler, if you're doing 30 to 50 grand a year in the territory, you're doing pretty well. Different expectations, different values, different thoughts when you broke into the business back then. Now you're looking for movie parts or TV roles and commercials and $1 million contracts and clothes and I don't know what they're looking for now. But back then it was a different attitude. People coming out of that snake pit or coming out of a training camp or a school, or just individual. Who was it? It was the guy's name, Fred Atkinson, up around Buffalo area. He's the one that trained Adonis. Excuse me. And those guys up around Toronto and then. So every area had their own, their old salty old guy, their old shooters and stuff that they learned from, I know I got way off the subject.
Well, I'll bring you back slightly then. So, as pay from Challenger and Champion.
No. Well, it depends where you sat in the territory. What kind of, if you were a tag team that had been moved up there, you might be getting a bounce. You might be getting, $1,000, $2,000 a week, bounce in your pay because you got more, I don't know. When Bam Bam was around, but I don't think too many guys followed what other guys were making. It wasn't until Bam Bam came around and started complaining about the week he had. We made 12 or 14,000, pissed the Giant off, so the Giant sat on him for 20 minutes in the garden. Wouldn't let him move. And then he was humble.
Well, yeah. How can you even complain when you're making that much in a week? That's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, you get lost in you're lost in your own importance,
Yeah. Do you know, you've brought him up. I'm going to have to ask about Bam Bam Bigelow because I don't know when we're ever going to get another chance to bring him up again. Like, when he came in, I know that Lanu Poffo hated him. Absolutely hated him. Was he just like the most reviled guy in the locker room when he came in?
I got along. He lived in Asbury Park, and I had a place up by Edison. So we were 30, 40 miles apart, you know. He was an incredible. He said, I called him. I said, "You're a pig." One night, I'll say I'm going to say 3 pizzas, because Ray Stevens said if the story's worth telling, it's worth enhancing a little bit. But I don't even know if I'm enhancing it. But I'll say 3 pizzas, 100 chicken wings, some of those bread sticks with the sauce, couple of quarts of soda, Coca-Cola or whatever, and he looks at me, he says, "What do you want?" I said, "What?" I said, I'm just in for a couple of wings and a couple of slices of pizza. It's 11 o'clock at night. You're up to 6 o'clock in the morning eating that much food anyway. But that's how he was. He would, and I can't. He's sitting there going through two or three pizzas, and we're up in Buffalo, New York when this order was made. And then they're good sized pies, and they call them in the East. They call them pies, like in the East Coast, and then pizzas with this and that, pineapple and ham or whatever, But I want 2 pies or 3 pies, 100 wings. It's God, yeah. Who's gonna 100 wings? Sit there and how fast can you chew 100 wings? We got to get up at 6 o'clock and catch a plane. But that's what he was. He was. He talked a lot. I guess to some people it seemed braggadocious. Where he was. He didn't. I was training a lot. He told me he hated bodybuilders, and I was in the gym every day. Does what you mean that? No, you're not a bodybuilder. Okay, whatever. He said, "But I hate bodybuilders," and he was, he was a big, strong guy, and I guess Lanny hated him. Some guys just hated him. I know. I don't know why. His dad had a roofing company. All his money, he lived at home. I guess he was one of the first guys in the East that got a push, because traditionally, when Vince Sr. ran the territory back then, nobody living in the New York area, as far down as Maryland or so, they'd never get a push, never get used in the WWF in those days. So that's so he got a push there. I think he had a big match with LT Lawrence Taylor in WrestleMania. He got a good payoff there. He won. I know he won a lottery number.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he was a lucky guy. He was, he's into everything. He won a lottery number and got into the roofing business or construction business with his dad. But just his eating and stuff, his habits and stuff were just, just blew his liver, kidneys out.
Speaking of someone who may have eaten and drank a bit too much, Captain Lou Albano starts managing the Bulldogs, I think probably in '86. And this is the last year he's a full-time manager, in the 80s at least. In '86, had he at least calmed down slightly, or was he still crazy Lou that we have all heard about?
He was a lot calmer. He seemed much... Well, the Allentown days were gone. The TV days were gone, and we were... and the managers weren't up front as often. I don't know how much he traveled with the Bulldogs. As Heenan, Fuji, there's some couple managers that traveled, but they were the ones that usually were active in your match or something. And Lou never really did much, and sort of walk around and do something he wasn't supposed to do. But but by that time, Lou probably calmed down a lot. He was moved back to Florida, had his family and stuff back there.
Yeah. Do you remember why Vince McMahon was sort of trying to phase Lou out in particular, do you think?
I think he faded all the managers. All the... see, there was Freddie, Lou, Ernie.
Yeah, I was just wondering because it was only maybe last year, the year before in '85, that he was a big part of the Rock and Wrestling Connection, getting Cyndi Lauper in, and then he's sort of being phased out entirely, and then he has like a retirement match, and then he's just gone for like most of the decade, nearly 10 years.
That was, I think that was pretty much the plan. Ernie had passed away. Blassie was getting pretty old, and Luke couldn't really do much in the ring. He couldn't. So he had the guy like Bobby Heenan, Fuji, Jimmy Valiant. I don't know how active Jimmy was, or Johnny Valiant. One of the Valiants it was
Johnny. Luscious Johnny V.
Yeah. Okay, Johnny. Liz, of course. Sherry Martel. So he was going for a different type of manager by those times, by that day. Those Fred, those guys, they were done.
They were just old hat, basically.
Yeah, because they would just show up for TV and the Garden anyway. The whole time from when I first came in there in '80, the end of '80 or '81, they would show up at a Garden, or possibly an extraordinarily big show. Maybe it was a special or a pay-per-view or Shea Stadium, which I was never at, but I would just for instance, Shea Stadium, Bruno Zabisco, or something like that. But aside from that, they wouldn't. Maybe Philadelphia Spectrum or those big buildings, but normally they weren't around. They would just be there at TV for those 2 days, and that'd be in Madison Square Garden.
Back to Dynamite then, and he once said that he liked Hulk Hogan very much, and I was wondering if Hulk Hogan was a fan of Dynamite.
I don't see why not. Hulk spent. Were they on the same company in Japan?
That's a good question. I know they were doing tours with. I can't remember if it was All Japan or New Japan, but they were working in conjunction up until like 85, 86, and then they cancelled it. But I know that Dynamite always seemed to be on the A shows with Hogan.
Hulk was with Inoki, and Dynamite was generally with Baba. But whether they crossed or not, they got together, they hung out. They probably had a good, got a good friendship going in Japan. I wouldn't be surprised if they met one another there. Which would be, probably where Hulk came back with the idea, aside from Calgary, with Stu and Brett and those guys coming in, when he brought those guys in from Calgary. They had a good little thing going up there.
With I'll tell you what, right? So we both watched the Dark Side of the Ring documentary on Dynamite Kid, and one of the main speakers on it is Dangerous Danny Spivey. I seem to remember Danny looking back at archive footage in the WWF as almost like a Hulk Hogan clone, because he was about the same height. He had the sort of same hair, and then they put him in yellow trunks at one point in '86 as well. Do you have any Danny Spivey stories?
Danny's a good guy. I like Danny. He was a football player, bouncer down around Tampa. He was, a rugged, solid guy. You've heard the Adrian Adonis story about him and Adrian?
No.
Oh, well, he was, I don't know why, because Danny's a big stud, big raw bone, rugged guy. Why Adrian would want to mess with him, but evidently he did, So I guess he would take liberties with him in matches and stuff. So one night, I wasn't there. They're in a different town, and this is all hearsay that I'm going on. But Adrian was getting funny in the ring, getting cute, and trying to hook a, or getting stiff with a chokehold on Danny. And Danny said, beat me, but I'm not going for that. Do what you like, but don't get yourself silly. So Adrian did a couple things, and wham, Danny was over it, and he cracked him, and he just knocked him cold, and found a way to pin him. And then he got back to the locker room, and Adrian went after him again, and he cold cocked him again. Just his whole side of his face was just a mess, So Danny was I worked with him several times. I had a match with him in Boston, real good match. I think that I was getting ready. I was coming out with a champion or a snooker match or something like that. Following this match with Danny, he and I went about 15, 20 minutes. Real good match, up and down, rugged. I threw him through. He went right through the whole the ringside blockades that they have. He went right through it and stuff. It was good. And I liked Danny. He was a good worker. Good side. He became a good card in Japan. His solid stuff in wrestling and stuff. Becoming a Hulk, I don't know. There's one Hulk, so you couldn't. What's his name? Scott Hall was supposed to was the next Hulk Hogan. Vern Gagne was going to make Scott Hall next Hogan, but that didn't work either. Big guys, good-looking guys that can talk, guys. Just something captures your imagination. Bingo, and you're in there. So, but we're talking about Danny Spivey, but he was around. He stayed around. Then he started coaching around Tampa. I think he does it, and now he's found the Lord, I guess, and he does a lot of rehab work and helps guys. I guess he's helped out people that down there in Tampa area that needed to be taken to rehab. I guess he showed up when Jim Neidhart, the daughter or something, wanted help, and talked to Jim to get into rehab. And Jim wasn't not his first guy, so it wasn't his first rodeo. So evidently he's done that, helped a lot in that Tampa area since he's I don't know that he ever had a drug problem or that he ever was, but maybe he had some other problems. I don't know. I don't know that he had, but he's been really fundamental in helping people around the Tampa area, that Central Florida area that have had problems and stuff, getting into rehab or helping families and stuff like that. Just what I've seen, I don't know, on a personal level, on a strict, factual level, but I know offhand, talking to friends and knowing things that have gone, that he's been instrumental in helping a lot of people. And he was a good hand, and he was a good, solid worker. Man, Japanese liked him.
Can I clarify? Was the Adrian Adonis fight? Was he let go after that? Was he let go because of that, or was something entirely related?
That was before the. That was before the Flower House, I think. Even when Adrian was, Adrian just wasn't making shows and stuff. He was, he was just missing.
No, sorry, I meant Dan Spivey.
Oh no, Danny was no problem for the office. Maybe that had something. He was around after. No, I remember sitting in Fresno with Hulk and everybody, and Hulk talking about, Hulk joking about Spivey with Adonis, and they had, had all that implication. Well, no, he was around.
Okay, I'm going to give you a couple. I'm going to give you a couple more questions, and then we'll sort of wrap it up for this week. Then, so one of them I've got for you is in his book. I don't know if it was in his book. I think it might have been his book. Dynamite admitted that his road expenses in the 80s were £700 a week, which sort of equates to, I think it was about double at that point, so like $1,400. So that's hotels, rental cars, food, but also drugs. So how much did you spend on the week for hotel, rental cars, and food?
Well, I figure it was about $100 a night. It was about $100 a night living, hotel, so that's 700 right there. We ate good, so that's another, $100 a day, 1,400. That's not many teetotalers, guys weren't afraid to, have a drink or anything back then, and drugs too. There were drugs, so yeah, easy. You could go through 1,000, 2,000 a week, no problem. You're on the road, and you're not looking for drugs. People are bringing them to you. It's not like the old territory days where you're in one town every week, and you kind of, but you're in LA every 6 weeks. You're on, you have people and things you do, or somebody else does. Somebody else has a friend that has a friend that has a friend. So there's ways, to get stuff done. So then, it's 1,500 to $2,000 isn't really, crazy when you think of. Now you can lessen that, like Nikolai and the Sheik used to travel together, shared a room. Nikolai carried his hot plate and went shopping at the market, and he would cook in the room, garlic and all kinds of stuff, and he cooked meals, and so their bill was probably a lot. It's funny, Nikolai was in Japan, had his hot plate and everything. At Keel Plaza, there's a beautiful hotel we used to stay at for Inoki, and they had, please son, dummy, no, cooking, smell, garlic, that's hot, too much.
Were they the cheapest on the road then, would you say?
Yeah.
Who was most expensive then? Who were the people who like totally not living in their means and getting like the best hotels every single night back in the 80s?
Well, Flair all his life. Flair is the personification of Buddy Rogers interviews. Learjets, limousines, Space Mountain, Rolexes, alligator shoes, these fine threads, all those jackets that last robe they were looking for. That my friend's wife made, Olivia Walker made for him that last robe. They're all, $5-8 grand robes a piece. And she was hand stone each bead, one by one, and that's $8 grand back. You're talking, the mid '80s, early to mid, when Flair had all that stuff going. So he'd spend money as fast as it's like that 2.5 Men. Have you ever saw it with the one with the Richard Mike Stewart, the Daily Show? The guy took the cup and poked the whole bottom off. They took the said, this is cash flow. This is your money. But that's Flair's even doing commercials now. He's still going. 72 years old, still out on the road. Gotta give him credit.
Was anyone in WWF particularly fond of getting the suites and the Hiltons and the Sheridans and all that?
Oh God!
Who maybe couldn't have afforded it?
Yeah, well, everybody is making pretty good money, but I don't think anybody was that crazy about accommodations because you're moving on. There's so many things that happened that I don't even remember. Interviewing, doing promos, doing interviews with Oprah, and like I said, like the Fuji Hospital where I was hitting on the nurse, and I don't remember any of that stuff because we were moving so fast, so often. Sometimes two or three things a day we're doing. here and flying to TV and doing a TV, then a match. You know, always, you know, usually ending with a match for the day, but you know, the rest of the day was full too. You just never knew what the hell's going on. Where you were.
I will ask you one more question then. It's a bit more of a serious question. So Dark Side of the Ring also spends time talking about, as well as Mick Foley does in his first book, when Dynamite broke Mick's jaw for daring to suggest a spot in the back. Was Dynamite particularly known for taking liberties with the enhancement talent?
Not that I know of. I mean, I'm sure, you know, there's a good chance he may have. A lot of this stuff was real, you know, was high risk anyway. You know, the headbutt, the elbows, the suplexes, you know, there's a lot of diving, a lot of flying, a lot of going on. As far as I know, he didn't, you know, there's one guy, well, like Jake told, you know, somebody split his eye one time, and you know, Jake tells him, hey, "I'm going to do it, Jake. What do you want me to do? Both eyes. You don't say yes, then it's going to be both eyes, and they tell him which eye you want me to use. You know, blacken his left eye. Then okay. That's 100%. Because he one night in Japan, some guy and boom, he got a, you know, bloody nose or split lip or in eye or something like that. Oh, that boy has to learn a lesson. You know, listen to. So he went down next day. Oh, I'm with Yasu today. Lovely. What do you want me to do? What do you know? No, don't get me involved. Okay. He took the guy down, locked him up, cradled him, tied him up, got his arm, took his arm, bit the arm, tore off a piece of skin, and spit it out. There you go, mate. That's for the eye, mate. No problem. That was it. You know, that was Dynamite. That was Dynamite all the way. Took the guy down, locked him up, grabbed his arm, bit, ripped a piece of skin, flesh off. Left a nice hole in the guy's arm. And then, boom, just spit it out. Oh, that's it, mate. That was over. That's the end. You know, that's the way, that was his mentality. That was, you know, cut eye, there's no cut eye. It's over. You know, that's all. That was happened yesterday. This happened tonight. The end. That was his mentality.
Do you remember anybody else who was particularly rough on the jobbers, or maybe even the jobbers were really rough on the stars?
Oh gosh, I've heard about guys. I've never seen. When I learned this from Piper. I always took care, but I learned this from Piper. I think we used to get $75 for TV. Doing, you know, standing there all day for 5 hours doing interview after interview after interview, and then sitting through, sometimes, if you're on the third hour, sitting through 3 hours of TV at night, 3 different, you know, and they pay us, even the this superstar, world champion, doesn't matter who you are, you get your $75 for the day. And, you know, it's you know, pretty much insignificant amount. And I learned this from Piper, but Piper used to give his to the guys he worked with. And I, you know, I was, hey, that's, you know, and after I you know, I got that, I used to follow that, you know, I followed along with that. I was, hey, that's a hell of a thing. I go with it, you know, because $75 in those days wasn't going to make or break me, you know, but, you know, the guys driving 200-300 miles to wrestle, you know, be humiliated, you know, have somebody rub a sandwich on you or something, you know, slam you upside down, do all the things I used to do to them, you know, for 3 minutes. It's not too much to, you know, to kick into the guys. They get transportation, and they'd get a little bit extra, but so that, you know, they could buy themselves extra 6-pack of beer, a bottle of wine or whatever. That was good. I learned that from Piper.
So we're going to sort of build up to the big finale of this podcast, but before we do, I will ask you one of the main questions is how was Dynamite to wrestle? So how stiff was he? Was he a ring general? How strong? And also his selling, which I think is a really underrated part of his game.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. He was a 5-star performer, you know. Given the opportunity, I'm sure I could have done great business with him. You know, he was in the tag team thing, and you know, and that's where they were locked in. But oh man, yeah, he stiff. You know, if you catch an elbow or a knee or something, somebody like that in a match of that gravity, and that's got that much momentum, that much going down in it. Then it's not, you know, it's not something you're gonna, you know, go home to your mommy and cry about. You know, you catch, you know, you catch an elbow, you catch a knee, you know, something. He's not going out there to hurt you or you know, none of the guys I ever worked with, you know, were ever going out to, you know, everybody was going out there to make money, to put asses in the seat, and you know, to put on a, you know, improve the show. Was no, you know, I'm tougher than you are. I'm, you know, maybe I want to draw more. I'm over more, or something like that type of thing. But all the guys I ever worked with were pretty much settled and, you know, doing business.
So the big question then, and unfortunately it's a bit of a sad question, but it's the big question that everyone wants to ask. So I'll tee it up with Hamilton, Ontario, the 13th of December 1986. So it's a tag match with you and Bob Orton versus the British Bulldogs. Dynamite is whipped into the ropes, you're on the outside, and you put a knee into his back, and Dynamite goes down. So I'm going to ask you all about that. We might have touched on it at one point, but we'll go a bit more in depth here. So do you think... what was the cause of it, basically? Did you throw the knee too hard? Was it in the wrong place? Or was it just simply his back? It was the camel. It was the camel. It was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak.
Yeah. I didn't even touch him. I don't remember. I think he went down before I even hit him, I can tell you the truth. I mean, it happened so fast, and it was so all of a sudden, I'm down, I can't move. You know, I'm down, I can't move. It wasn't me hitting him or him hitting me, or, you know, I just put my leg up, and, you know, if he ran into it, he might have run into it, or he might have just stumbled and fell into it because his back had already gone out. But there was nothing I did or nothing, you know. It was just time. It just clicked, you know. Just, I guess it'd been out before that. And I keep watching on those Dark Side, all those other ones, how he continued working. I have no idea how, but, you know, he was in tremendous pain. I remember the last tour I was on with him in Japan. You know, guys buy a bottle of booze to keep in your room and, you know, drinking stuff. He had that Everclear. He was drinking that wood alcohol with orange juice and stuff. Whoa. You know, that's like 180% or 190 proof, you know, almost 100% alcohol.
Wow. I mean, you can see through time drinking that stuff, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Crikey.
But he was, you know, he was in pain. He just kept going.
When he went down, I mean, you said just before that he said, I'm hurt. But how is that message conveyed to the back? When a serious injury happens in the mid-'80s, how is the message that someone's legitimately hurt and seriously hurt and can't continue and need medical assistance? Is there a sign from the referee? Is someone sent to the back?
Yeah, it just carries back through the referee, through guys standing around the ring, through whatever, you know, it's something that's not planned, something that nobody has any ideas is taking place. You know, just boom, the guy's down. So it's a surprise. So it gets back there, you know, and it's, you know, it took time milling around and, you know, what's happening? Can you move? I can't move. You know, They get him on the stretcher. They get him back. And I guess slowly he got back moving, but they took him away in an ambulance, if I remember correctly. And I guess it took a while for his back to kind of fall back in place, or he must have pinched a nerve or something like that.
Well, he ended up having. They took 2 discs out of his back. He had to have emergency surgery, I believe. The next question I'll ask then is the match itself. You're a seasoned veteran by this point. Are you just like completely calm, finish the match, and just you're not? There's no panic going through your mind.
Yeah, it's just finding some different way to go. I'm pretty sure they were the champs, and it was just. I don't remember, but either finding a DQ or finding a way for Davey Boy to take the fall or something like that. After that, you kind of boom, 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 boom. You're on the fly. I don't tell you the truth. I don't even remember what happened, but you're just making up as you go. It's just, you're just pulling things out of the air to make them fit, so people don't know that Dynamite's laying on there on the ground, paralyzed, and then trying to go through it still, finish the match, and then them getting their hands raised.
You'll be happy to know that the finish was you grabbed Fuji's cane, and then you missed Davey and you hit Bob Orton and he took the fall.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So then, that was probably what we had in mind, but we had to go. Had to move into that spot a lot sooner than anticipated. That's all.
Did you? Probably in the modern days, you might even go to the hospital with him, like jump in the ambulance. I take it that wasn't the case back in the 80s. Did you get to visit him, or were you just too busy on the road?
I don't remember if Davey went with him or not. Somebody had to get all the bags. Somebody had to grab his bags. So Dave probably went with him. And they got to, right back, or if they came back from there, I don't know. Somebody with the office, somebody with the office always goes with you. Back in those days, somebody would take care of you, and see that you're, the office has got the insurance, the hospital, everything,
Yeah, Dynamite and you yourself obviously remained really good friends, and no one blames you. They didn't even name you in the Dark Side of the Ring documentary. They just showed the video clip, so absolutely no one blames you for it at all. And neither does Dynamite. At any point did he actually wind you up and, jab you about the injury, or, make jokes about it, or was it just sort of swept under the rug and carried on?
Never mentioned.
Really?
Yeah, there never was. That's why I never seemed to think it when he went down before he even got to me, or it never came up again because, it was just one of those things. Nobody wasn't planned for it. Nobody knew it happened. It's far from intentional. It just something that went down, and everybody was surprised by everybody's shocked, everybody's surprised by the actions. What happened? There's nobody, some of these things like that happen, during your career, a rope will break, a plank in the ring will break, somebody will jump in the ring. You're always prepared. You're always prepared for something. You're not prepared, but you always have to be flexible to go on that because you're traveling on you're just going word by word of mouth anyway. You got no script. You got nothing that you're following anyhow. It's just. Rock and roll. Mm-hmm.
So I'll tell you what, we'll end with this one then. And after Tom was hurt, Davey Boy would have a succession of guest tag team partners. Very much a surprise to many of the fans who didn't realise Dynamite was hurt, but the WWF would still promote months afterwards that the Bulldogs were going to be there. And he had quite a lot of different tag team partners, and there were some obvious ones like Roddy Piper, Junkyard Dog, Tito Santana, but there's a few that I don't know when we're ever going to be able to mention again that I thought I'd get your thoughts on to sort of end this podcast, and one is The Crusher.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
It must have been in Milwaukee then.
Yeah.
Chicago, Milwaukee, yeah. Oh, I love Crusher, man. He was good. I was first in AWA. I was just a kid. I've been on the road not even 2 years, and I got I didn't realize what a legend he was. What, how legendary and stuff he was. And I was hanging around with Bull Belinsky, Frank Shields, the truck driver. He kind of took me under his wing when I got there. And Crusher lived in Milwaukee. He'd pick us up in his Cadillac. We had to go to Rockford or town, and fly into Milwaukee. And towns that we were flying, he'd pick us up in his Cadillac, drink. We'd buy, in those days they charged trans, pay so much a mile. You'd buy him, he drank cold duck. You'd think he'd be drinking beer, but he liked the bottled cold duck in the glass. So he'd buy him, cold duck to drive back on the trip. And, he was a cool guy. He was past, he didn't need wrestling family. He'd been the Crusher for already years and years. But yeah, he was really cool to us.
C.V. Affy.
Yeah. He was around there. They're trying to move a bunch of guys in to take to be another Jimmy Snuka. And there was only one Snuka. So, it kind of went around. No matter how good you looked or what you did, there's only one Snuka.
Corporal Kirshner.
Corporal Kirshner. Nice kid, good guy. Nice, good worker. But, none of these guys could move like Dynamite. They didn't have, none of them, as talented as they were, you're talking about the finest all-time, one of the top performers of all time anywhere, going down. Well, you eliminate the past 5 or 8 years or so, or 10 years of professional wrestling with all the diving and flips and things that they do now. But up until even now with this, I got to go back to that Stan Hansen match, 210-pound guy against a fit 360-pound guy. And it was competitive. He made it competitive. They both did. They both made it competitive because they're both great workers. But that's, that's the beauty of the business, You're able to work towards people and convince them in one aspect or another.
I'm going to give you one more name and then I'm going to shut this podcast down. One of the strangest cats in the wrestling business ever, Billy Jack Haynes.
Billy Jack Haynes. He went off, huh? He went off too. He went off on a tangent. He would, I don't know. I wasn't around. I don't know if his is drug related or when he was there, he was a nice guy, funny guy. I remember we're on one of these motor buses coming from the airport, and he got the whole flight crew telling us, "Oh yeah, we're in Portland." They're talking about an incident on the plane. Yeah, we have a bad government and stuff. And this lady went on to the hospital to amputate her leg, and they amputated the wrong leg, and she sued. And she was she lost her lawsuit. All the airplane guys, they found she didn't have a leg to stand on. But he'd suck every. He was good. He was a good guy, mellow guy. He got into a fight with Mike Sharp. I don't know what that was about. Another one, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. But evidently he was a rugged guy, tough guy. And then I think the thing about being in the WWF, WWE is you get really satisfied your way of living, your way of life, the money you're making, the hotels you're staying in, the food you're eating, where you're eating, that that you don't really that you don't realize that after you go, you think McMahon's supposed to take care of you the rest of your life, that you think you're supposed to be on that comment all your whole life, and when you don't, you have to come down from being a superstar and enter back into the everyday world. So, you know, you're fortunate. That's why I say I was so lucky to have surfed, you know, because every once in a while I pull into some big peak way out there, and that's, you know, that's a Madison Square Garden main event all over again, you know, and I was able to lead a dual life. So Billy Jack Haynes, a lot of these guys, you like to talk to them and see that they went, you know, or note that they went kind of goofy, but you don't know what was going through their mind at the time. You know, if we talk about Brett and the championship belt with Montreal and stuff later, then that's what you don't know what, you know, that's a whole nother, you know, ocean to cross when you get there, but you don't know what's happening, you know, what the drugs did to the guy's mind or what happened to the guy, you know, after you left. Because when I was with him, we were cool. He was cool. You know, he was always fun, always funny to be around. You know, intelligent, you know, easy to get along with guy.
Well, I think that's probably the best way to wrap up then, because I'm thinking of an image of you surfing, enjoying yourself, and I've also got an image of a story I heard once of Billy Jack Haynes sat in a car with a set of pliers chewing up his ears as a rookie because he wanted cauliflower ears to look like the veterans. So that's definitely two different ways of living.
Yeah, that's kind of the far ends of the spectrum there, yeah. I never had to do that.
Well, I'll tell you what then, I'm going to wrap this up for now. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've got that image of Don surfing and Billy Jack Haynes chewing his ears up with pliers. Thank you very much for listening, and we're going to be doing Dynamite Kid episode 2, or part 2, as it were, on episode 8, if that makes sense. So I'll wrap this up here. So the Twitter, the YouTube, DonTheRockMorocco.com for all the signed stuff if you're into that kind of thing. You want something personal from Don himself. And one thing I forgot to put at the beginning was we're going to start a campaign to get Don Muraco into WWE's next game, 2K22, I believe. So I'll put a hashtag up, I'll do all that kind of thing, and we'll try and get Don immortalised in the digital medium. And so I don't even know if he's been in a game, and I don't think Don knows either. But for now, thank you very much.
I don't even know what you're talking about, but I'm all for it.
I know that he'd pay good royalties, so we want to get you in the game.
All right.
All right, then. Thank you very much. Hope to catch you next week. And cheers, Don, for joining us once again.
Aloha.